go. All right. Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year, and welcome to the January edition of the Town of Philipstown Conservation Board. The first item of business is I would like to approve the minutes of November.
So moved.
Yep. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We all shared with the group a memo that we put together that went out in regard to RKB materials on Horsemen Trail Lane, which went to the planning board, and I think that's going to be discussed at the planning board next week. You know, and it was a previously approved spot, and we had just made a mention, I think, just putting in engineering, asking for an oil separator with whatever generator, stormwater was going to be done. I said, I think that basically what we're saying is that the only thing we were asking for in addition is that the planning board consider engineering in the drainage, such as an oil separator to remove contaminants. This is for Horseman's Road. You had, right? And we went over the site visit with Jason on it. Okay. So with that said, I will start with Garrison Golf Club, Plan Development District.
Hi, good evening. I'm Adam Stollerow from law firm Sive Paget and Rizal. I'm environmental counsel for the project. Glenn Watson, the project engineer, is going to be doing the explanation of what we're seeking in the permit tonight. Our wetland specialist, Jan Johannesson, couldn't make it tonight. He's ill, so just the two of us. But wanted to introduce myself, and as you know, this project went through a full seeker review, including an EIS, and the planning board issued its findings statement in November. So that brings us back before you now on the issue of the wetlands permit.
Thank you. Good evening and Happy New Year. We're seeking a wetlands permit because we're doing some restorative work and we have some work that's necessary for the project within the wetlands adjacent area. And I just want to go over that with you and then point out a couple of things about it. And my hope is that you'll find at the end of this meeting, you'll find appropriate to schedule a public hearing. And I know I talked with Andy about it, but the public hearing is, the town law requires it to be conducted jointly with the planning board on this project, and we're hoping that we'll walk away with your agreeing to have Andy work with the planning board to choose an appropriate date that will work for both of them. But to talk about the plan, this is the, I forgot. I'm notorious for forgetting about this thing. This is the Garrison Golf Club, Shakespeare Festival site. This is Route 9 along the top of the map, and this is Snake Hill Road that goes outward to the west. All of the activity that we anticipate in the entire project is located in the southeast corner. There are really two components of this permit that in the statement in support, we talk about the infrastructure improvements that we really need to make in order to make this project work. And the first one is the reconstruction of the entry. And as discussed in the statement in support, we worked with DOT, and there's a supporting email from DOT with regard to the location of the driveway. We're not intending to move the driveway. We are intending to widen it slightly to the south and closer to this green area wetland, which makes us have some disturbance in the wetlands buffer zone. So it's about, I think it's about 13,000 square feet altogether, of which there's a couple of thousand about 2,100 square feet of new paving to make the intersection work. The point of this location is that it's kind of the best point along Route 9, despite the incredible length of frontage that we have. The point along Route 9 was chosen because we're trying to balance the fact that we have a speedway coming up that hill. For those of you familiar with Route 9, we have two southbound lanes that are trying to merge, and invariably somebody is trying to get ahead of the next guy right at that point, and it really comes together almost up at the driveway intersection. So we didn't want to move the driveway to the to the north for that reason, because it would worsen the situation. We didn't want to move it any further to the north because we would be here for greater permit and greater disturbance. So that's why we chose this particular thing. We did work with DOT. You have some supporting material in your package with regard to that. The other infrastructure improvement is a combined thing over towards the Snake Hill Road entrance. Well, as you come in and over the dam, right in here, there is an existing power source that we want to trench new power line up to the parking lot, and I think it's about 85 feet of trench that goes through the adjacent area before the underground electric cable comes up to the parking lot. That particular cable is going to be used to power electric automobile charging stations in the parking lot. And there is a pump house down here that we use for the irrigation system. So what we want to do is, in 2005, the fire company was promised 2 easements so they could draw water out of the pond. That never happened. So what we're wanting to do is fulfill that promise. We're wanting to install a line from the old pump house. I think it's about 125 feet. That's in the book, and bring it up to where there would be a dry hydrant. Now, basically, a dry hydrant is basically a big straw that the pumper truck pulls the water out of the lake or to the pond. We don't have to go into the pond because we'll use the draw pipe from that's already there and into the pump house. The pump has been replaced. I'm sorry, the pump has been taken out. It's no longer there. So that's about 125 feet of trenching. There's no soil removal at that point. The soil would be taken out, the pipe put in and put back, and then seeded over, and you have a planting plan that talks about that. It's just going to be a seed mix that's going to be put down. So those are the 2 infrastructure elements to this permit. The other are mitigation measures, and those mitigation measures, there's really 3 elements of it. As you may know, for safety reasons, the pond level has been lowered about 2 feet. So we have a rim of imagine now it's getting vegetated a little bit, but was basically unvegetated rim around the pond. What we want to do is vegetate that with natural plants, and of which I won't speak about the plants, but we did give you a landscape architect plan for that. And so it's surrounding the entire pond. There is some soils that some of the greens have contaminated soil that need to be trucked away or need to be replaced. So part of the permit what we're seeking is for these 2 of the greens that are within the adjacent area or the buffer area need to be remedied. We're taking out about 6 inches of soil, replacing it, seeding it over so that it will go back to a more normal, a better condition. So those are the infrastructure. Those are the mitigation measures. So, in talking about that, we've got about. I'm going to check it. The infrastructure that we require for the project is about 17,000 square feet of disturbance. The mitigation's about 35,000 square feet, 35,700 square feet of disturbance.
Would you repeat that again, Glenn, please?
This is on just for your information, it's on page 2 of 5 of the statement of support, with 17,090 square feet of disturbance for the stuff that we need for phase 1 of the plan, the driveway, the pump and the electric service. And then the restorative work is about 35,000 square feet, and if you look at it, it's about 2.09 ratio.
And that's in the form of soil removal and planting? Is that...
Soil removal, trucking it away. There's a report from the geo guy that talks about that in more detail. I'm capable of talking about it. But it will be, so those are the two things that we're looking to have you approve. This plan is the erosion control plan. You'll see that we've provided for stockpiles for soils. We've provided for silt fence and the normal kind of stuff that's associated with this kind of operation. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. I talked briefly with Max at the beginning. I know he has a couple of comments that he wants a little more detail. We'll be happy to provide that to you, but we hope you'll find that this is sufficient. The package that we've given you is sufficient for the public hearing, and that we can, as I said at the beginning, walk away with your willingness to have the public hearing and instruction or permission for Andy to make arrangements for that public hearing.
Questions, comments, and the other thought is, do we want to do a site visit?
I was hoping to just get one clarification from Glenn. On the utility line that you said is being brought from the power source?
There's a I don't know exactly what to call it, but there's a post with a electric box, junction box, and that kind of stuff already in place in the wetland buffer.
Right.
We want to trench from that point out to the parking lot.
And can you just kind of show us where that trench will, is it essentially following the road?
Yes.
Okay, so
Follows
it's
the
not
edge of-
really disturbing anything new, it's kind of following the,
It's
towards the road to the parking lot?
It's going up the edge of the road to the
Okay.
parking lot.
Thank you.
I got one question. You said that the pond was lowered by 2 feet for safety reasons. What,
The reason for is that there was a study on the pond and it needs to be repaired or replaced. So
the pond?
the dam,
Oh, the dam, okay.
yeah, the dam needs to be
Repair.
repaired or replaced or rebuilt, or this solution was to lower it down to where it wasn't threatening to burst.
Is that in the plan to redo that dam at some point in time?
No, it's not. I mean, it's not in anything we've discussed. There is some dealings with the DEC, but frankly, that's been a quiet part of this. There's not been much action in that regard.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. You say you went over this entrance with DOT?
Yes.
Well, I think I've been traveling this road for about 50 years. There happens to be a winner-take-all straightaway there to get to the turn.
Yeah.
A winner-take-all straightaway.
Right.
Now, unless that entrance is greatly enhanced, so people going in there can get out of the way for someone in a hurry, something's going to have to be done with that.
Well,
That's too stuffy and short.
There is some. I don't have that with me, but there is a turning lane being proposed out in Route 9, so that people traveling north can come up and queue to turn left. There's another turning lane coming from the south, so people.
That's going to be added. It's going to be added, or it's not already there.
No, it's going to be added.
That might work.
Are they gonna widen the road, or are they gonna exist? Because it's a weird stretch north, like why they ever decided to make it 2 lanes. So are they gonna use, was the plan to use that and sort of, instead of being a passing lane,
I'd
more
have
of a
to look
turning?
to answer the question whether there's going to be any widening or not. I'd have to look, because I don't know the answer. But it's all within the existing right-of-way. If there's any room it's gonna be closer to that post and board fence that's going along that edge on the, there's no plan to, I don't think there's any reason, no, I don't think there's anything that's going on this side of the road, south of the intersection.
But Glenn, you did mention that the entrance is going to be widened at the mouth, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, remember that at the close of a performance, people are trying to get out. At that time, there'll be human traffic controls and traffic controls put in place to direct traffic, to stop traffic coming from the north and south, and whatever safety devices are required. And that was done this past summer season. So we're talking about that only being something that was required when there's a large event, typically at the theater thing. I guess I can envision a wedding that would be large enough, but certainly mine wasn't, you know, so. But it's, so those events will have, the theater events for certain will have traffic control in addition to the improved thing. And the idea is that you can have a left and right turn, you can stop the traffic coming from the north and coming from the south, and you can have traffic turn left or turn right out of a kind of a double wide pavement and empty it out and get the problem taken care of and get the condition, I shouldn't say problem. It's not a good salesman. Take the condition, relieve the condition as quickly as possible.
Are there going to be any drainage infrastructure improvements to the road during this process?
I don't think so. I think it's going to just sheet drain like it does now.
Oh, no. Well, my next point, I guess, I was wondering if the board might want to consider how the road will be maintained in the, you know, throughout the year in the buffer, especially that now that it's being expanded.
This is going to be, you know, open all year round. This is going to be open all year round, and it's going to be routinely plowed, and it's going to be paved. So in terms of grading, getting a grader in there and fixing up the dirt road, we're not going to have that situation. So
Thinking more of like road salts or things like that could be conveyed into the wetland or the wetland buffer. Yeah, and that could degrade.
I'll get you that
water
answer, but I don't know. I don't know that answer.
Well, maybe
Show us where
there's
the additional impervious surface will be added?
Well, this is going to be just generally widened, and that new lane is going to be closer to the wetlands, so it will be on your right side of that driveway at the very beginning until it gets, it's along in here on the south side of the driveway.
Make it sort of like double width.
It's going to be able to pass cars through that gate. That gate is going to be moved.
Right, so you'll double what's there now,
Yeah. About.
roughly.
Yeah.
And I suppose like a porous surface is not a possibility?
I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine there is a possibility, but I don't think they're much more difficult to maintain.
Yeah, the other points that I was talking to Glenn about before the meeting are more specifically pertaining to the mitigation plantings. I think they're extremely extensive, but there's not much discussion about any sort of ecological assessment prior to the plantings and how the choices were made for what species were going where and what the ultimate goal is essentially for the habitat that's being created by doing all of that work. And I think to add to that too, just to finish
I
this
can
up.
tell you what the ultimate goal is. The ultimate goal is to create more open meadow kind of, and have the prior condition to the condition prior to the golf course take over the place. So the plants I know were chosen for that purpose. I know there was a balance had to be made between its proximity to the water and the upland thing. But the idea is that we'll recreate the natural environment to a great extent.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a direction and aim that you can achieve by having, you know, someone like your wetland professional make an assessment of what would naturally be occurring in those areas, and then make sure you're mimicking that to some extent and not putting things in that, you know, may not persist in the future.
We'd be
Yeah.
more than happy to work with you on a planting plan and take your advice with regard to plants that may or may not be appropriate, but this was done by a landscape architecture firm that kind of knows what they're doing.
Yeah, no one's questioning that.
Yeah, and there would need to be a long-term, 5 or 7 years maintenance plan of how you're gonna upkeep it, and if things don't thrive, what you're gonna do.
Well, I know that, I don't know how long the plan normally would be, but we certainly would have to be responsible for maintaining it until we didn't have to maintain it anymore.
And speaking to that too, understanding any sort of invasive species that may end up taking the site over, and having maybe less of a passive approach to dealing with that component of the project should probably be evaluated as well, so that you can ensure your plantings thrive. So
That's not an objectable,
Yeah.
that's within the goals of Shakespeare.
It may take over.
sure.
It will definitely take
Yeah,
over.
you have to work. It's doable, but it takes time.
The only other thought that I had just when you were giving your presentation was something for the board to consider, maybe in this case, because of the volume of traffic, and as Glenn was saying, that the ultimate goal is to create a naturalized habitat where there used to be a golf course, is maybe making any sort of improvements to the road that could benefit any sort of wildlife passage. I don't know if that's something that we'd want to consider as well.
Which road?
The entryway and exitway here. I mean, if essentially you're creating a high volume or high traffic road to access the site, maybe there's some small improvements that could be made that would act as even more of a mitigation.
Your suggestions with regard to that, I'm sort of thinking of the work that would be involved if you had to create, either if you had to build the road up a couple of feet to provide something underground for passage, but the vast majority of this time, the traffic will be nil. You know, you'll have the period before the performance for an hour or so, and you'll have the exiting traffic. And other than that, it will probably be, I'm going to say it, I think it definitely would be less during the rest of the time than the golf season, than what was occurring in golf season. So I don't, to be honest, I guess I don't really see the point of it because once the traffic starts going, the animals aren't going to come there and try and get across.
Well, things like in the springtime, you'll have, amphibian migrations that will tend to occupy paved surfaces, especially in areas like this. So if you had traffic at night on a rainy day, there would be some mortality there. That's one component of that I can see being prevalent, but that's more of a thought, I think, just to add to make the project even better potentially. So
I will discuss that.
yeah,
Little tiny wildlife crossings.
they have that.
Can I ask a question? Where the electric box is?
Yes.
And the pump house, how close are those together? And if I
About
understand
About
correctly,
125 feet.
close together.
Yeah, between the pump house
Yeah.
and the electric service, it's about the same as where the hydrant's going to be. So it's about 125 feet.
And so you're trenching them. Are you trenching? You're trenching the electric to the parking lot for the
Yeah.
stations, for the charging stations. Are you increasing the number of charging stations?
Well, there's none, are there any there
There
now?
was.
Are there charging stations there now? Oh, down here. At the main parking lot, there's some here. But we're going to put them in the Shakespeare parking lot.
In the Shakespeare apartment, and that's where people were parking on the field this summer.
Yes. Well, slightly different spot, but in that
In
general
that
area.
general area.
Yeah.
And then the pump house, you're trenching it to where?
Pretty much up the same way. Well, we're taking the route from the pump house, which is right by the pond, and and coming up to the road where the fire truck will pull up and hook the pumper truck. So and that's about 125 feet.
Other questions or comments? So, what's the thought on whether we should do a site visit or not?
I think it's eminent.
Yeah, I'd like to, I haven't seen it.
Yep. Yes, I think we should do a site visit then and schedule that.
And then speaking to Glenn's request for the joint public hearing
Yeah.
next month.
My conversation with Steve Gaba is, the wording of the law says shall hold, which in legal terms means must. His thought was that perhaps the best way to do it would to have a public hearing when there's another public hearing for this project going on. Is there going to be another public hearing in the near future, relatively near future?
Yeah, we have to have a public hearing on site plan, the general overall site plan, which will be just sort of a record of what we were planning, specific approval of phase 1 for the site plan, and that because the plan development district area is being reduced in size, and there are going to be one residential lot, and the one lot being conveyed to the Hudson Highlands Land Trust ultimately, we're doing a subdivision map. Both of those require public hearings, and we're hoping to, by the planning board, so we're hoping that we can have one public hearing with the planning board and the conservation board on the planning board's 2 subject and your 1.
That makes sense. So, I mean, I think we should do a site visit. I mean, in my opinion, but I don't want to speak for everybody, I don't think that this is an undoable project. There might be little tweaks here or there. So,
We'd be happy to work with you on that.
right.
And again, we're very hopeful of having our public hearing sometime during February. Typically, the 3rd Thursday in February was when the planning board holds their hearings. If that could be arranged, or if it's your date a little earlier, that would give us a little more flexibility.
That's fine. So I think at this point we need to do a site visit, and I'll just put together a memo going to the planning board, which you'll be CC'd on, that we're planning to do a site visit. At the present time, we don't see anything that's insurmountable on this, and that, it's in the planning board's purview to schedule a hearing, and they should be thinking about scheduling a hearing that will include this.
Okay,
And we're ready for February, right? I
I
mean-
would think so.
After, we should be able to get a site visit in and.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
we come before the planning board, so if we have additional questions, that,
And there wouldn't be any reason we couldn't issue a conditional permit with the planning board. So some of these items that we mentioned
Yeah.
tonight, I think that we could probably iron out.
well, we expect that you're going to have some comments and some,
well, I was gonna ask that too. Should it be 1 permit or should it be 2? Because they are distinct,
well,
I could almost say roll it into 1, because really it's almost 3 things going on.
Yeah.
Widening of the driveway, the dry hydrant / the electric line, and the whole mitigation plan. And because of the large mitigation plan, I don't know, I myself was sort of comfortable leaving it as 1.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
It's all of a piece, right?
even
On
though
the
there's a
property.
couple distinct things. So, everybody happy with
I
that?
was really trying to make that distinction so you could see that there was a
Yeah.
balance between the restorative work and the infrastructure work.
Do you anticipate any other permits coming before us, do you think?
No. I don't think in the future, I mean, I think there'll be referrals from the planning board because of some stuff, but I don't think there's any other place where we'll be within a regulated or controlled area.
Earlier you said that the turning lanes on Route 9 are proposed right now. Would any of this change if these turning lanes don't come to fruition? So
Well-
will you change and come back before us with
I
another
think it's
change?
quite the opposite way around. I think this won't come to fruition unless there's the turning lanes, and we've already made the application to the DOT. They've already told us what turning lanes they expect us to put in. So it's really, like I say, I think it's actually the opposite. If we weren't unsuccessful with that, we would have a whole different problem to deal with.
Right, so if you have a whole different problem to deal with, would you make changes to that entrance again?
If we were in a position, and I don't expect this at all, I mean, we've done enough work with the DOT, and I've done enough work, our firm has done enough work with DOT over the years to understand that once we come to a plan that's acceptable, we'll get the permit, and then there won't be, just like with you folks, there'll be tweaks to it, but that there always are. But if that were not to happen, and we were to say, okay, we're going to make this a 2-lane road, and we're going to move this down here, we'd be right back here with you, or we'd be right back here with DOT. I don't expect that we'll be going. We've done enough work for me to confidently say that I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, so we'll need to schedule, which we'll do quickly.
I'm just taking note that this is a couple of years after the first public venture out into the site inspection at the Garrison Golf Club, and you're at the time of the year when you're going to probably experience the same climatic conditions.
I don't know, I mean, all we've been getting is rain except for the one snow the other day.
Yeah, it was pretty cold at first.
Yeah. And I think even if there's a small amount of snow on the ground, I think we would be fine.
Okay.
I think the big part is looking at the alignment
Yeah.
of the driveway and seeing, even if there's snow on the ground, we'll see where the pond is lower and where the trenching is gonna be. I think it's doable,
Thank you.
so. Okay, thank you. Thank you
Thanks.
for coming in. Okay. We do 15 Kings Dock Road.
Good evening, everybody. So we last were in front of you in November. At that time, the board decided it would like to have one more site visit, which was held on December 1. And so we're here this evening to seek a decision, hopefully approval by the board for our proposed project. In our view, all the criteria are satisfied, and the board should grant approval. Since the site visit, there has been one potentially positive development regarding the septic system. And that arises out of you may recall that Mr. Galler said, could you get the Department of Health to send you a little note saying, yes, your proposal to slim down to 3 bedrooms is okay with them. So when I went to do that, I said, why don't I just ask him about the 4-bedroom system and what he thinks about it. So I had a conversation with Dylan Holger around December 8, maybe. And he said, well, if the town board says okay, we'll say okay. I visited that with Beatty and Watson, who said, are you kidding? So I went back to Dylan Holger, and I've done a bunch of research. And here's pretty much where I've come out. There are 4 players, I think: the New York DEC, the New York Health Department, the Conservation Board, and the Putnam County Department of Health. With the DEC, I've spoken with Alyssa Devine and Angela Scamizzi at the DEC and can pretty much check off that box. Vis-a-vis the stream, which is a Class B stream designated by the DEC, we're okay as long as we don't do work in the stream or on the banks. Vis-a-vis the wetland, we're okay for two reasons. First, it's not a DEC designated wetland. And second, even if it were, DEC's jurisdiction ends at the 10-foot elevation level, and all this work would be above 10-foot elevation. The New York Health Department regulations generally require a new absorption field to be 100 feet from a stream or a wetland. I expect that the wetland will not be considered a wetland for that purpose because it's not a wetland for any other purpose under New York law. But I haven't verified this with the Department of Health, the State Department of Health. Fitting the absorption field in an area at least 100 feet from the stream and at least 10 feet from the pool, which is the requirement that Dylan Holger says we'll have to live by, not the 20 feet from a retaining wall, but the 10 feet from an above-ground pool. It won't quite fit because the county hasn't adopted the state rule that if you put in a FujiClean, you get a 33% credit. If they had adopted that rule, then we could fit it all in. So the state regulation permits either the state or the Putnam County Department of Health to grant a waiver. In the case of the county, the local Department of Health has to conclude that conditions on the site make it impractical to comply with the standards, or disapproval will result in significant hardship. And appropriate protective measures have been taken, and it's environmentally sound. In the case of the state, the standard is simply whether the proposal is consistent with the general purpose and intent of the regulations. So I had a further call with Dylan Holger this morning, and he said, yes, the county will entertain a waiver application, but it will tend to look for hardship. And he was a little dubious that 4 bedrooms instead of 3 was a hardship. But that's not the standard the state actually sets for the county, and I haven't found anything in writing that suggests that the county can just on its own make up different standards. But we'll see where that goes if we get there. He did acknowledge that the FujiClean would be a real benefit. And if, in fact, our non-compliance was de minimis, that would also argue strongly in favor of them granting a waiver. And he would also he said, we would take into consideration if you got a waiver from the state, it wouldn't be dispositive. So I think basically where we're at is there's a possibility, if it's of interest to you, that we could put in a brand new system with a FujiClean on the front end, and the whole thing would be, vastly better than what we have now, no matter how many bedrooms we had. But that we're in front of you, because we don't know where that's going to go, seeking approval for getting rid of 1 bedroom and having a 3-bedroom setup with the existing system. And we're more than happy to keep pursuing this, And if we can get the approvals before we get to that point in construction, we'll put in the 4-bedroom system. But I thought you guys should know everything I know about the likelihood of getting there. And with that, I mean, if you guys have more questions or anything else, I'm happy to try to respond, but we'd really love to get a decision. We've been at this for almost 2 years, and I think we've demonstrated that we qualify, and hope the board sees it that way.
So I have questions or comments?
I got a question about, where is the pool gonna backwash?
Backwash meaning,
When the pool filter, when you clean out the pool filter, it usually backwashes out in daylight somewhere. Is that gonna be, has that been taken into consideration? Because it's like real close to the water there.
well, if you're going to clean out the filter, you're going to use a hose or something?
Usually with a pool system, it backwashes the filter. And whatever sediment is in the filter, it washes out onto the ground.
I think we'd take care of that by running it into the system that's going to drain into the cool tax. I don't know why it would just drain down unless it's insignificant. I mean, I've had a lot of pools, but I've never seen much backwash activity.
Well, all pools have a backwash, but that brings up another point, Tony. With a pool, you very often will need to draw down the water for repair or something else. Like, what would be the plan for that as well? That, I never thought of that, but, I mean, I have a pool. We have to draw it down. If we've got to make a repair, we've got to do something.
So are you planning?
The possibility of a repair with an ICF pool is virtually non-existent. It's not gunite, and it's not a liner. It's, it's this thick with concrete on two sides and insulation, concrete in the middle and insulation on two sides.
So are you planning to have a chlorinated pool, or, I don't love the term salt, but a
I'm
salt?
sorry, what?
Are you planning to have a traditional chlorinated pool, or are we using a salt
No chemicals
generator?
whatsoever. We'll run multiple gangs of ultraviolet, which work just fine for us out in Sagaponack. Never use
would be
chemicals.
fine.
And it'll be a year-round pool, so we'll never drain it down for the winter season.
So, just as an overview, over time, I've had long conversations with the town attorney, Steve Gaba. In terms of the steep slopes, our purview is essentially regulating steep slopes as how they might cause detriment to watercourses, streams, wetlands, and their buffers. And they have somewhat in the latest plans minimized that. As well as both Max and I independently were down at the property within a week or so of that January, July, whatever it was, 8th storm or what have you. It was a mess down there, and I think both of us were sort of amazed that the existing septic system held. But what would happen if we had another event like that? I think that the Fuji system, at least in my mind, is a very significant mitigation. We had I know there was discussion over time, and I had a discussion with you. I think particularly Rob and maybe yourself were a little concerned, would that pool ever become another house? And I know I had discussed with you, and I don't think you were against that, of having a restriction on the deed in regard to that.
Yeah, either an agreement or deed, but I think it's worth bearing in mind that you cannot have a residential structure in Philipstown of less than 500 square feet. So it's not possible.
Isn't the pool bigger than 500 square feet?
No, it's about 310. for the pool house.
And
It's way smaller, so you're completely protected.
Footprint of the pool as
yeah,
well.
we're talking about the footprint of the pool as well.
Garage.
Oh, converting that into a residence?
This is, I'm just bringing up, was brought
Oh,
up by the
I
board.
thought you were only worried about the pool house.
Never thought anyone would come back with this property.
Yeah, the
before
the
operations
pool
on
is bigger than 500 square feet, you're right, 700. So in theory, I
I mean,
guess,
I'm going to throw out my opinion. I feel at this point, yes, there's some of us that are uncomfortable with the project, and the site has been overbuilt. But I think that both of you are willing to do a lot of mitigation. You're willing to continue doing mitigation to the tidal wetland on the property. My feeling is that, yes, some of us are uncomfortable with setting a bad precedent. But as I watch, and I don't want to be editorializing now, but what I watch what's going on with different things with our former president, I almost wonder if the engineering term is better, fit for purpose rather than precedent. And I think here we might want to think about really fit for use. I think it makes more sense, and I think, personally, I'm going to say, I think that we should contemplate, if everybody's comfortable, issuing a permit with conditions, and let's lay out the basic conditions now, if we're all comfortable with it.
I'm okay with that.
So I don't know what everybody else feels.
What are, the permit would cover all of the proposed additions?
I mean, we could break them into two, or we could have it as one. I'm not sure it makes that much sense to break it into two, because they're almost intermingled, they're so close to one another, but I'm not against it either way. I do think that putting in a self-contained septic system is a very big deal for that property.
So we should talk about that then. I mean, you alluded to potentially that would not be a possibility because of the waiver is up in the air, essentially, right? They would need our support in some form or fashion, and that would give you more credence to getting one. Is that what you surmised from your conversations?
well, I think when I mentioned to Dylan toward the end of the conversation, I said, so I've had conversations with Mr. Galler, who said he had spoken with Max Garfinkel about it, and that while he hadn't sounded out the rest of the board, in his own opinion, having a Fuji Clean and a brand-new system was better than having the system that's there, and that the board would likely look very favorably on that. And Dylan's response was, well, that would be helpful too. But I can't, I can't make any guarantees about what they're gonna do over on the other side of the county.
No, but if, the point is if they decide that they only want to go with 3, you'll still have the Fuji system in.
Well, that's a question. That isn't what we proposed, but they're not all that expensive. I mean,
But if we
to
wanna- if we
put
wanna
in,
make
and
it a
that we
condition-
can do as a, what do they call it, a repair and replace.
But if we want to make it cited as a condition, we could put it in the permit,
Yes, you could.
regardless of whether or not
I mean,
what they
if-
do.
Yes.
Would you be willing-
And if that was a condition, and in fact, it's readily doable. I don't want any conditions in place that then I will walk over to the other side of the county and they say, gotcha, no, you can't do it.
But the county would be in favor of the Fuji system regardless.
They should be, they generally are. They're kind of encouraging people over on the lakes on the other side
But if
to
you related it,
put
they
it
would
in.
look favorably on that also.
And you'll look favorably on it.
Right.
And, I think we don't mind spending the extra money to put one in, whether we get 4 bedrooms or don't get 4 bedrooms. It's an extra margin of safety.
So thoughts?
I am a little confused about the whole reducing to 3 bedrooms, then now we're talking about a 4-bedroom capacity. Why are we talking about a 4-bedroom capacity if you're reducing to 3 bedrooms?
Well, our
Because the original plan, as it was described to us, was modest, and it was really more of moving a bedroom and making space as you age in place. That was how this was kind of proposed to us. So now I'm just
well,
wondering about the 4-bedroom.
actually not. When we were in front of you all of 2022 and the first part of 23, it was for a 4-bedroom system. When it appeared from my discussions with Beatty and Watson, that it's just not in the cards. For our final submission, right, which is what you're working with now, we went to a 3-bedroom system. That's the first time we were at 3 bedrooms.
That was with no sort of pre-treatment or anything
And
like
that was, just no change, just leave it alone. It works fine. Every time Steve Marino comes by, I say, Steve, do you see anything in the wetlands that suggests that our septic system is not working? And he says, no, everything that's going on in the wetlands is just fine. So it works, but I agree, and I think you agree, that a brand-new system, even if it's for 4 bedrooms, would probably work better. And one with a Fuji clean on the front end would work even better.
Agreed. I just, we went down to 3, now we're going back up to 4, we're,
I said
I feel like there's a bit of horse trading going on, and I just want to be clear on it.
We're willing to go back to 4. I'm not asking to go back to 4. We're happy to live with 3. We've got 3 other bedrooms on the property. Right? It's not like we need them.
What the town loses at that point is that there would be no pre-treatment, right, correct? If you stay at 3, there will be no
Yeah, if we just stayed at 3, the town doesn't get the Fuji clean.
Okay, so they will not install a new system
But if
they do 3.
If that's the condition the board wants, we'll do it. As long as the county says okay. But if the county for some goddamn reason says, no, you mayn't put a Fuji clean there, I don't want our yes to turn into a no. It's just not that significant.
What if they say no 4-bedroom, but you'd still have the Fuji system?
We would put it in.
So I think that's the condition we should think about building on, because you would have enough space for a 3-bedroom Fuji system.
Well, it's a 3-bedroom system now,
Right.
and you just add the Fuji clean at the front end,
So, I mean,
right?
I think
It
that's
would be a little closer to
Right,
the
I think
house.
that-
More comfortable with that.
I think that's the fallback. I also think an engineer, if the county is wanting an expansion field, I assume that's the issue.
No, the expansion field is fine.
Okay, so
Because
this is the
Dylan
filtration.
Holger said, you
Okay.
don't have to build it now, you just have to, we would just have to have like a right-of-way, right? That sometime in the future, if it were ever needed, the owner of this parcel has a right to use the other.
And,
Parcel
and you
for-
own both parcels at that point. at this
I'm
point.
sorry, what's
You
that?
own both parcels at this
Yes,
point in
yes.
time. So that would be doable.
But in theory, 30 years from now, when we're dead and gone, somebody could split them up, right?
Right, but if there's an easement on it, because there are a
If there's an
few.
easement, then we're okay.
Yeah, because there are a few systems in town that are actually on somebody else's property with an easement. So,
But as Dylan also told me, the likelihood you will ever need the reserve is about that big.
so, the devil is in the details, but, what we're in theory getting in terms of mitigation is a superior septic system. You'll continue to do mitigation within the tidal wetland, as well as, there'll be a deed restriction that that area where the pool is does not become another habitable structure.
Yeah. And however we work that out, I think it'd be done by agreement and doesn't need to be in the deed, because then I gotta hire a lawyer and filing and this and that, but
You're an attorney.
I am, but I don't do that. But if GABA or anybody says, no, it's gotta be in the deed, sorry, Okay, we'll put it in the deed.
So, what's the board's feeling?
I'd like to see deed restrictions in place. Not just on this project, on a lot of projects we do. You know, when someone sells the property, that stuff doesn't really transfer over, does it?
Not, it transfers over, but the information doesn't always get passed on. to
Even
the
with,
next
a-
owner.
even with a deed restriction, it doesn't always get passed on also.
And it
If
depends
if
on
he,
what
if
you're
he decides to
talking
give
about.
up the project and go to Florida, and someone else goes in here, and then they're back in front of us again wanting to do whatever,
Right.
it'd be nice to have those things in place.
I mean, for instance, I have several conservation easements on my property. If I were to sell it to somebody else, unless the assignee, which is the Hudson Highland Land Trust, is vigilant, anything could happen.
Right.
So it's really who's watching it. It's not a perfect science,
No, but it's improvement to have
Yeah.
it on the.
so.
on the deed.
I think that's true, Andy, no matter where you
Right.
put it.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely agreed. So-
People have to watch.
I mean, I would like to see a little more detail on the restoration plans for the marsh from Steve. And I know that we had discussed pulling your file now. I don't know if you ended up going down and looking at it, just to get the level of detail that Steve had provided in the past.
I've got what purports to be the final mitigation plan. It's 3 pages, but it doesn't have the kind of detail you indicated. I've got another one that isn't the mitigation plan, but has all the trees and other plants denoted and spaces for the ones that were gonna be taken out and the ones that were gonna be cut down and this and that. But, you know, that's all done and gone. I have already made up a list from what Pinelands has, and I also in the past have used a nursery down in Tennessee called Hoffman, which does very good plugs. So that's my likely sources, but Pinelands has most of the stuff we'd put in there, the rushes and the narrow leaf and the broadleaf cattails.
I guess my concern too is, I think the lion's share of the work that has been proposed for mitigation has been planting. And I guess I would like Steve's kind of assessment on whether or not that's necessary to do anymore in the future. You know, when do you stop planting I mean, the ultimate goal is to get to a marsh or a wetland system there that's healthy and thriving in its native form. And I think I would be more interested in seeing the maintenance and management of that ensured in the future, if you are there. You know, I don't necessarily know how much benefit we're getting unless there's been a significant reduction in functioning wetland. Maybe because of that storm, that plugs need to be consistently put in every year.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you know, the Polhemus took it pretty much back down. So if there's a high tide, it's being partially inundated, which is what used to happen. And in fact, he probably took it down a little further than it was when we bought the property. Out, you know, 120 feet out, which had built up from some prior storms. And that's where the Japanese knotweed was. That's all gone, et cetera.
I think, I mean, I would suggest that to the board regarding maybe focusing on the mitigation plan on managing a maintenance schedule for the tidal marsh, and then if planting is required, maybe we look at other portions of the property, like maybe along that stream bank.
Yeah, well, I
You know.
think we probably should do planting for the part that Polhemus
Yeah.
fixed.
Yeah.
It's about 120 by 90 feet.
Yeah.
Roughly, because there's nothing there. Cattails may come back, but it's gonna take, what, 5 years? Maybe, so we can speed that along. And
But let's spell that all out, like that.
yeah,
that could,
it's
you know,
fine with me to spell it out, because that's what I do. I spend probably from spring to late fall, I spend at least 5 hours a week, either along the edge or in the marsh, either taking out vines or taking out phragmites or whatever. It's, our friends and family have taken to calling me the marsh warden.
But I think that should be formalized in a document that we can reference as a condition for the
Yeah,
permit.
whatever's reasonable, because that's what I do anyway.
Yeah, we need something to reference so that we can, the same thing that we did for the bankers. Steve produced annual reports every year for them. He monitored the site. I mean, if you can follow that same type of formatting or rubric, I don't necessarily have any issue with you producing a report every year. But, that's to be seen too, if the report's pretty bad and not scientifically sound or,
Yeah, I love Steve, but I'd just as soon not pay him $500 a year for a report, but
Well, that might be something that,
that's, we'll work it out.
yeah.
Okay, so, do we have other comments? Because then I'm gonna ask a question. Any other comments or questions? Do we want to do this as a single permit or two permits? Meaning, in other words, the addition to the house and the pool, or separate them?
I think we should stay with a single word. Just makes life easier, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that. So-
Yeah, I don't see the point, I mean, you could, but I don't see that it adds anything.
So, I mean, it's gonna be a conditional permit, and we're gonna have to fix the wording for you, but essentially, we're looking for a new self-contained septic system. We're looking for, a deed.
Well, you're looking for a front end.
Front end, yes,
And if we
yep.
can do it, we're happy to put in a whole new system.
Right. We're looking for a deed restriction, we're looking for a detailed management plan, long-term, probably 5 years.
That would be part of the deed restriction?
No,
management plan?
that's separate, that's managed by Max or whoever his predecessor would be. And I think there's probably some more construction detail in terms of erosion controls and protections that need to be put in.
And I think you mentioned also an easement,
If the septic requires an expansion field, if it's gonna be on the neighboring property, which you own, there'll be an easement that allows that.
Yeah, but that will only do if, in fact, we get the approvals to put in a new system, otherwise.
Right, but it's on a conditional
you know.
permit. So with that said, would anybody like to make a motion to issue a conditional permit?
Make a motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Against? Okay, so we will issue a conditional permit.
All right, thank you very much. What's that?
I miss you, I used to see you.
Yeah, well, we'll figure something else out. I'm finally getting around to the, putting the dock in this spring, and I've been spending a lot of time thinking about totally electric boats, and I may be in front of you to add a little solar on the dock. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Max, do you have any additional business?
none other than I'm gonna be scheduling another stormwater group meeting, probably next month. Yeah, but other than that, no, nothing, no updates, really.
And I guess we were gonna also, we have to decide whether we wanna call Boscobel back in, because, while we had given conditional approval, they never, answered some of the stipulations, including putting notice in the local newspaper, more importantly, notifying us, meaning Max. And it doesn't look like the applicator was licensed to do this type of work in New York. It appears that they're licensed to do right-of-way.
That's next to
Who,
that.
weren't they working with Trillium?
No,
No, they weren't
no,
working with Trillium.
Weeds Inc.
I don't, who were they working with?
Weeds Inc.
Okay.
And they're, because permitting is very specific. You can get multiple categories.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were for right-of-way, which is power lines, utilities. And I just think that, because I think this is gonna be ongoing, you just don't get rid of a meadow. So I do think it probably makes sense for us to have them in so we can talk to them. So
Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
Something like that, was that?
He was the primary contractor and they subcontracted to.
Yeah.
Maybe we can have them come in and present the annual report,
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
and that would maybe frame it in a different way a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah,
It's a good idea.
because I don't want to be adversarial, but, you know, this is, you don't just herbicide and all of a sudden by magic, you now have what you want. It's an ongoing, it's an ongoing process.
Have you seen it drive by? Oh, my.
So, I think that's what we'll do. We'll call them in next month. Vis-à-vis, lastly, vis-à-vis Garrison, I should call it Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. Do we want to pick a time now?
Sure.
Yeah, when is it gonna rain again?
It rains all the time.
Every other day.
I mean, the 2 weeks before New Year's, at least by me, I calculated just shy of a foot of rain.
Unbelievable.
Well, I'm good for a Saturday, I don't know about you guys, or a Friday works as well. Weekday, but not Sunday, just can't do Sunday.
What were the weekdays better for people now?
Well, for me, weekday would be good, but I'm just speaking for me, for the next month or so.
What?
I can do Fridays more
Yeah.
than other
I mean, you got,
weekdays.
Lee used to set up, that's like a standing site visit day the morning of the meeting, but that was always during the week. You remember that with Dave?
Yeah, that was a while ago.
But we could pick another weekday and do the same thing.
Fridays are the only days that actually work for me
Okay.
during the week now.
In the afternoons or just Fridays in general?
Fridays in general,
Friday afternoon would be better for me.
Okay.
What's
you
that
know,
date?
or a Saturday.
What date, what date are you coming up with?
What's a date?
This Friday? Saturday?
I could do this Friday afternoon.
12th or 13th?
I could do this Friday as well.
What?
I cannot do this week.
How about Friday?
What about Friday?
I cannot do Friday.
How about the following week? Do Friday afternoon,
Yeah.
What's the date on that?
19th?
19th? Should we say,
19th
like,
is
I
okay.
can't do the 19th. But you know what? I don't need to go. I actually live right down the road.
Okay.
I can always go myself,
Yeah.
and I am very familiar with that.
I am too.
Yeah.
I was gonna,
So don't do it for me. Don't change it just for me.
For
Right.
this twice already.
So should we say Friday the 19th at 12:30 if somebody from Beatty and Watson can be there?
Sure.
Okay. There we go.
Cheryl, when you correspond with them, can you ask them to flag the road and flag the utilities?
Yeah. Flag where
Where
the
the
road is
line
gonna
is
be
gonna be.
wide.
12:30, Friday the
Yeah.
19th, 12:30.
All right, we covered everything? I think we have.
Yep.
So I need a very important motion.
I make a motion to dismiss.
Yeah, well, ask that question.
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Thank you, and thank you, everybody, for turning out in this miserable weather.
Where we're meeting down there.
oh, where do you want to meet for this site visit?
I would say front entrance. Yeah, I think Route 9 is easier.